Now, as I mentioned earlier, we really like following up on some of the companies that are mentioned on the program. And one of our regular fundies, Stephen Scott from Pack Partners, mentioned a stock that he reckons has a bit of potential, Melbana Energy. So I thought we should get them on to discuss. Melbana's Executive Chairman, Andrew Purcell, joins me now for more. Hi, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Give us the latest material news when it comes to Melbana's activities.
Thank you. Good to be back again after a break. We have an onshore block in Cuba, which is a prolific hydrocarbon zone that we drilled some exploration wells into with our partners last year and found considerable volumes of oil. We've been back now. We're appraising that oil. We've just finished the first of two exploration appraisal wells. The first well has concluded a week or two ago. It's been a great success. We've refound the oil we found last year in the exploration well, but now we've tested it under controlled conditions, flowed oil to surface over a very large interval, and we've completed it, and we're ready for production from just the first shallowest reservoir of what are three vertically stacked independent reservoirs. So we're off with the project in Cuba.
So interesting, because we literally never talk about Cuba, right? So when we think about exploring in a country like Cuba, what is the landscape like in terms of support, in terms of sovereign risk? I mean, just flesh that out for us a bit.
Well, it's a prolific hydrocarbon zone. It's Gulf of Mexico. It's got a very well-established oil industry. It produces something like 50,000 barrels a day from onshore, which is one of the great advantages. Its infrastructure's been there for decades. It's got some very large oil fields. It needs more than what it's producing, so it imports a lot. So the regulatory regime of the National Oil Company is very well advanced and good black letter law development to encourage foreign investment. And it's very practiced in helping companies like ours to understand the relationships you need in country. The point you made about sovereign risk, well, I sit on a number of boards, and I have a career from my banking days doing transactions in emerging markets, fin resources all over the world. And I must say that in this current environment, we are having considerably more headwinds in developed markets trying to develop resource projects than I'm ever seeing in a country like Cuba, where they want the oil, they're happy to have you there, they make the permitting run smoothly, and they're excited to have the foreign investment. So I see more sovereign risk in Australia, quite frankly, than I'm seeing in Cuba.
All right, that's interesting there, coming from an oil and gas man. And would Cuba itself be the destination for any production, presumably, which is to come from this field?
Different qualities, different answers. We have three vertical reservoirs. The highest ones is from the sheet that they typically produce from in Cuba. It's a typically heavy grade oil, and yes, they need more of that, and yes, they will take that. The lower targets where we discovered oil last year gave exciting hints of much lighter oil, which is what we're about to appraise with the next well that's about to kick off. If that is indeed the case, well, this is a valuable source of potential foreign exchange income for Cuba, as well as a great earner for ourselves. So I think that might be an export opportunity.
Okay, and what is the potential timeline? Like, how well are you funded to bring this about, to bring this to fruition, to production?
We're very well funded. We're 30% an operator of this drilling program and of this block. The other 70% we farmed out to the National Oil Company of Angola a couple of years ago. That's Africa's largest oil producer. So they're sitting there writing the bulk of the checks, but they like us being the operator because we're smaller, faster, and more nimble. And for our 30% interest, we pay heads up, we pay our share. We've got $35 million in the bank, which is more than enough to complete our share of this current appraisal program.
Okay, so this current appraisal program, what happens next? When do the taps start flowing? Because you mentioned that there's still appetite for oil and gas in that region, or in Cuba specifically, but you do feel like we're up against the clock in terms of how that might change in terms of decarbonization and in terms of the oil price as well.
Well, the oil prices
Yeah, it's doing really
giving us
well.
great
Yep.
support at the moment. But that can go the other way too.
Yep.
We know how commodities can go. But we're keen to get producing as fast as possible. The appraised discovery we just finished that I mentioned at the beginning of our chat, that is completed. That means we've done everything to hook it up and it's ready to turn on now if we wanted to. But the reason we're waiting is that we're just about to start drilling another appraisal well off the same pad to the deeper targets. So we will have to be drilling through this shallow reservoir again. So we don't want to be producing oil through a section that we're drilling through again shortly, because that can cause differential pressures as the volumes may change, which can cause problems with drill pipes getting stuck and the like. So, but once we've cased through this upper section, then we're free to start producing from this upper sheet discovery we've appraised. So this could happen very soon.
Okay.
We'll be in production soon.
Can you chew gum and walk at the same time? What about the Aussie assets? What's happening on that front?
The main one of interest, we have a number, we have a very good geoscience team, but the main one of interest that is always something I point out to people that just think of us as a Cuban play is we have an interest in an offshore block in Northern Australia, shallow water, southwest of Darwin in the Bonaparte Gulf. We sold it to a US oil major a couple of years ago, a $100 billion oil major that most people have never heard of. They liked it, they bought it, they're making a country entry to drill that prospect, they're paying everything. And we have a free ride. If they drill it, find oil, and there could be a lot of oil there, then we get a very handsome royalty. So bottom drawer, prize for our shareholders potentially that they don't have to spend another nickel on.
Well, when would drilling begin there, or when will you have more clarity as to whether this remaining unnamed US oil giant is going to go forth with the plans?
The oil giant's called EOG.
Okay, great, thanks.
A Houston-based oil company. They have a permitting process that they're running at the moment. They were hoping to have been drilling by this year. Permitting's taking a bit longer in Australia, apropos aforementioned sovereign risks. But they're saying drilling sometime next year or maybe the year after, depending on when that permitting and scheduling of rigs works out.
Can you just talk to us, Andrew, about your shareholder register? Like, who or what entities sort of comprise your biggest shareholders?
We are almost entirely a retail stock, and we're a very well-watched retail stock. We have some 10,000 shareholders. Somebody said that we're probably one of the most talked about companies on hot copper. We have good volumes as a result. You know, I'm very thankful to these retail shareholders because they drive great volumes and there's a great following in the stock. There's some institutions there, but a very small, less than 5% of the register.
Okay, and so for those 10,000 plus retail shareholders, they've got to be a bit more patient when you look at the share price. I mean, obviously the catalyst will be production.
Well, it's been a wild ride, the share price. You know, since we last spoke, you know, there's been some great returns, and where we are at the moment, you know, the market's always right. But you know, we're sitting on a 300 million barrel resource. We've now appraised something in one of those three sections, so it's real. It's going to be in production, and this is one of the world's great discoveries onshore in the Gulf of Mexico. It's considerably de-risked. And the rest from here is execution and a bit of luck with the appraisal of the deeper well. So patience has maybe been a virtue of our shareholders in the past. Now we're at the business end.